So someone asked, what is the difference between hand checkering and laser checkering, and can you tell the difference, and how do you tell the difference? Today, we're gonna have a look. We've got 3 guns here. Let's see. So firstly, let's have a little look at the differences. As you can see visually from this Chequering to this Maruku, there is very little actual difference when you don't worry too much about it. They both have checkers. In fact, this one has tighter checkering than this one. Aesthetically, very similar to the untrained eye. However, this Maruku is hand done. Technically, that's a bad example because it's done with a machine. This one is done by hand. It's Arietta. This is hand done and this is not. What is the benefits and negatives of both? First, let's start with that. Well, firstly, the laser cut is way more uniform. Obviously, getting a machine to do something is you're going to end up with a perfect job. So you've got no bordering, it is perfectly cut, there is no mistakes, obviously. Every diamond is exactly the same. The depth is more or less perfectly uniform, and that is in itself wonderful. Whereas you look at this, once you get up into the points, it's a lot flatter. Once you get into the middle, you've got harder points. Your borders aren't perfectly natural. Your points that you meet at the tips don't touch perfectly, which is rather depressing. I mean, look at that. It's slightly off center. But for those of you who love guns and love handiwork, that little bit of extra soul, that little bit of extra character might be nice. There is a point I should say here, is that when you were talking about the best of the best, you probably won't end up with any of these little issues. I say little issues. It will be perfect. It will be as perfect as a machine had done it, and that's kind of what you're paying for with the higher end stuff. However, it's not purely aesthetic. There is technical differences that do matter, that really do matter. Before we move on to the actual physical, practical differences, let's take a moment to say hand checkering isn't hand checkering isn't hand checkering, and laser checkering isn't laser checkering isn't laser checkering isn't laser checkering. There are many grades and different styles of each. Laser checkering, for example, this one is very nice, very uniform, quite deep, quite sharp, and quite nicely put together. If you got something less good, an 88 arms is a good example, and I don't mean in a nice way. The laser checkering is less good. It very much more is evidently lower quality. Does it matter? No. Does it make it grippy? Yes. And I suppose that's across the course of this, is does it make it grippy in the right places? As long as that's yes, technically the checkering is good. No? Well, yeah, is the bottom line. However, it's these fine little differences that are why some guns are more money and some guns are better, which is what we're going to look at now, which is the technical differences. So, before I do that, hand checkering isn't hand checkering isn't hand checkering. This being done with a pushing traditional style, and this Maruku is done with a rotary tool. However, you do get some of the benefits of this and some of the benefits of the other with this hand checkering. So there is middle ground. There is middle ground. But hand done with a machine is still human involvement. I feel like that's a nice thing. Anyway, so the benefits of a hand checkered gun over a laser checkered gun. I think we've looked at the benefits of the laser checker. Well, with the hand checker, you get harder points. And I know that sounds like I'm being, very finicky by saying that's a good thing, but it is. So, when you laser checker a gun, you're essentially burning and cutting those out. What that ends up with is a looser grain, weaker points. You still have the grain running across the side of the points. When you hand checker a gun, you push the checkering file through, it condenses the points with a much harder point. The dust from the cut goes into the checker, and you actually end up with a hard quality diamond. You can, when you pick the gun up, feel that it is, it's going to sound stupid now, feel the wood of, it feels like it's finished. It feels like finished wood, whereas this feels like raw wood when you touch it. It's still overly rough for the quality of checkering. It doesn't feel smooth. There's no, it's an extremely hard thing to describe, clearly. But if you have a rough, loosed point, it is not as nice as a smooth, glassy square. It's a very different feel of checkering. Whether one is good and one is not good, I'm sure people will say, but my laser checker gun feels much better than any hand checker gun I've got. Good for you. I like a hand checkered gun. I like the fact that you can feel that those points are hard and good quality. More importantly, over time, a hand checkered gun will be harder with checkering. You'll end up with far less snapped points on a hand checker's gun than to a laser checker gun, from experience. Where does the Maruku fit into all of this? Well, you actually get a little bit of both. You don't get quite the same polished finish and the same hardness of points as you do on a properly hand checker gun, but you're don't know, like a 75% of the way there, so that's more or less good enough. However, you do end up with these little non-matching corners, the overruns, a little bit of character. I like character. Character on a gun is kind of what it's all about. So there you go. That's me talking about checkering and how it really doesn't matter how your gun was checkered, but a hand checker gun is nicer. It's more importantly the fact that you get the art of somebody's hard work gone into it. It's not an easy thing to master hand checkering or even finishing laser checkering. I will end with that actually. If you buy yourself a graver set and run over your laser checkering, you will end up with denser points and slightly better finish. That is something that is very worthwhile and something that we actually do quite a lot to people's guns, because you end up with a nicer feeling checkering. You end up with it feels less coarse, but does the same job as the coarseness that it had. There you go. A superior grip. So it is worth having hand checkering. There you go. That's me waffling about hand checkering for 5 minutes. Guys, take care. Thank you very much for watching. Hope I answered the questions on it. And I think we'll probably do one on engraving next.